We'll talk about that later. All right. Good to have all my good friends here. I think I know everybody pretty well. This is kind of nice. And today we're going to talk about friendship. And we're going to totally rip some stuff out of context. And then I'm going to put it back in context. And we're going to play with a little bit of hermeneutics. But mostly this is going to be practical and hopefully just kind of enjoyable, just as some friends sit around and talk. So let me pray for us. Thanks, Father, for Tuesday night and a dozen or 10 or so good friends hanging out. And we ask that you would help us to grow closer to one another and to you. We want to see Jesus in all these things. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, so let's talk. How many of you guys have friends? Raise your hands if you have a friend. Even just one friend, okay? Not Josh, that's what I figured. All right. Davin raised his pretend hand, and so did Karen. Good job. Okay, and Josh doesn't have any friends, so he's back now. Nice to see you, Josh. I know he's got friends, at least me. I'm your friend. So here's a couple of things to get us started here before we jump into Samuel. E.C. Mackenzie quote: "Some people make enemies instead of friends because it's less trouble." Brilliant, huh? That's nice, huh? All right. Best friends? Anybody have a best friend? Like, you can name that person. This is my best friend, and they agree that you're actually their best friend too. How many? Just Travis? Stephanie? Okay, Josh has got a best friend. All right, so 3 of you. Oh, yeah, okay. 3 of you have best friends, the rest of you not. That's actually not that abnormal. So we got a dozen people or so on here, and 3 or 4 of them, so about a third of them have best friends. All right. Here's a Russian proverb for you: an old friend is better than 2 new ones. Okay. All right. Henry Bosch. H.K. Downey tells about a large newspaper that offered a substantial amount of cash for the best answer to this question: what is the shortest way to London? The entry which won the prize has: the shortest way to London is good company. Agree? Yeah, okay. I took a 10-hour trip up to Indiana, and it's definitely easier when you've got good company. So I've done that a couple of times. So here's a definition of friendship from American Indians. Although the North American Indians had no written alphabet before they met the white man, their language was anything but primitive. The vocabulary of Indian nations was as large as that of their French and English exploiters, and often far more eloquent. So our language is the word friend. Theirs is one who carries my sorrows on his back. All right, so I want you to be thinking about the friends that you mentioned, and then the friends, that smaller group of best friend, and see if these things fit, see if there's a reason for these friends. Here's an English publication offered a prize for the best definition of a friend, and among thousands of answers received, here's the following: one who multiplies joys and divides grief. Good? Like that definition? One who multiplies joys, divides grief.
I want a friend like that.
What was that?
I want a friend like that.
Yeah, it does sound nice, doesn't it? I don't know, Josh, you were one of the ones who said you had a best friend, so hopefully you got somebody like this already. How about this one? One who understands our silence. Decent definition? All right, here's one. A volume of sympathy bound in cloth. That was interesting. A watch which beats true for all time and never runs down. Here's the one that won the prize. You ready for the prize winner? A friend. The one who comes in when the whole world has gone out.
Oh.
Those are pretty good definitions. So now I'm going to ask you again the question I started off with. How many of you have friends now with those kinds of definitions? True friends, like people who come in when the whole world has gone out.
I call
Still,
her my wife.
you call her your wife. Okay, that's not bad. All right. I don't usually think about that, but that's right. All right. So Bill and Stephanie, yeah. You have a friend, Travis, yep, and Josh. All the world comes in. No, sorry. They come in when all the world has gone out. Someone who stands by you no matter what the cost. All right. So let's talk about a text that you guys know probably pretty well. 1 Samuel. If you want, we're going to play in 1 Samuel for a little while tonight. 1 Samuel chapter 18. And now everybody has to go and get their Bibles because they came to a Bible study without a Bible because I barely ever use a Bible. Probably never ever go to a Bible study where the teacher doesn't use the actual Bible.
Wait, are you
Am I a teacher? Yeah, I think I am. Generally.
Wait,
Sometimes.
1 Samuel what?
1 Samuel chapter 18.
Okay. Thank you.
Remember, Hebrew Bible is just Samuel. So Samuel, the passage where Saul is very jealous of David. That's probably how they would say it in the Hebrew. Like, because they don't have like verse references and chapter references or book references. They just say the place in Scripture, in Tanakh, where Saul is jealous of David. So here it is. And you guys know, like, if you're going to say, what's the classic friendship text in all the Bible? It's going to be, what, two people?
Cain and Abel.
Probably not. Good try, though.
Jonathan.
Naomi.
Jonathan and David. Ruth and Naomi, that's good, too. Although, I don't know if that counts as friendship as much as parents, in-law. But it's definitely one of the better in-law relationships in the world, I think. So, yep. But David and Jonathan. Okay, here they are. After David had finished talking with Saul, Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself. From that day, Saul kept David with him and did not let him return to his father's house. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing and gave it to David, along with his tunic and even his sword, his bow, and his belt. All right. What grabs you in this? Any words jump out?
Covenant.
Covenant. Okay. Covenant, which is something we do when we get married, interestingly, right? Same word for testament, like last will and testament, or relationship. It's that kind of a thing, a relationship. Covenant.
Not a word, but he gave him everything that showed that he was powerful.
Yeah, that's really good. His tunic, his sword, his bow, and his belt. Everything else. Right? That shows he's a warrior. And now he's got nothing. It's good. Yeah.
It's like true trust. Like he's not threatened. He's like, here, take all my things that I use to protect myself.
Yep. And remember who Jonathan is, right?
Saul's son.
Saul's son, which means what?
He's a prince.
He's a prince. He's heir to the throne of Israel. He's definitely going to be the next king, except for he's not going to be the next king. And who's going to replace him?
David.
Right. This is quite the connection here. All right. So from that day, Saul kept, and he loved him. He became one in spirit with him.
Yeah.
That's pretty close tied. And then he loved him as himself. Okay. I don't know if I love anybody as myself. That's pretty amazing. And he didn't let him return to his father's house. Basically, he took care of him. He made a covenant with him, as you said, because he loved him as himself. He says it twice, just to make sure that you understand. All right. Look at chapter 20. Just turn your page a couple times, maybe once. Chapter 20, verse 5. It's actually verse 4. Jonathan said to David, whatever you want me to do, I'll do for you. Whatever you want me to do. Right? How many people, when they come up to you and say, I need a favor, you say, well, what is it? I want to know what it is, but he's right here. He's ready. There's only one step between me and death. He says, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. I'm ready. I'm in. I'm the guy. All right. It looks like some friends are having some nice little conversations there in the background. Hey, cut it out. I'm teaching something right now. No friendships happening on these text streams. Okay. I'm just teasing. It's kind of cool to see. But it's distracting.
Makes me think of Princess Bride. We just introduced the kids to that. As you wish.
Yeah, it's good. As you wish. Whatever you want, I'm in. All right, so that's 20 verse 4. Keep going. Look at verse 16 of the same chapter. Just to get a good understanding here. So Jonathan made a covenant, right? A relationship that God sets up with us or that they set up with each other.
Just to be
Covenant with-
clear, 18, then 20, then 16.
No. I'm in 20 verse 16.
Oh, okay.
I'm actually moving forward chronologically, although I would be someone who would go backwards, but yeah, Travis. All right. Verse 16. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, may the Lord call David's enemies to account. And Jonathan had David reaffirm his oath out of love for him, because he loved him as he loved himself. Okay. Now, that's the third time we've heard that same phraseology, that he loved him as he loved himself. Okay, this word ahav, to love. It's a pretty strong thing that's going on here. And in just a few chapters, it's been used a lot of times. So there's something hermeneutically going on, right? When it gets repeated, you're supposed to grab something. Now, here's what we're doing. Okay, hermeneutics. So back to our big picture thing. Here's us. Remember, this is us. We've got our binoculars, right? And we are looking all the way back to an event. Okay, so we got the U and the E. Those of you who remember my little vocalic world of interpretation. Okay, this is about interpretation. And all the vowels that come in it. So I, U, and E. So the event is what we're reading right now. And you're picturing in your mind something that's happened. Right? It's what the author is telling us about. So we're seeing a movie version in our head while Jonathan and David are talking, or whatever's happening in these particular things. Okay. So in my little diagram, okay, what I'm doing is I'm grabbing hold of the event and I'm going to the us world. And I've always told you in this class that you're not allowed to do that. Okay, so I started off by saying, here's the application. Friendship. Okay, and now I'm jumping and I'm using a text or I'm using an event. I'm wanting you to picture as that whatever it means for them to love each other as themselves. But I am doing a little bit of this next world, author. The author is telling us the story in a particular way that I think is going to let me get here, even though I started with this, which is bad exegesis. I've already done some of the exegesis ahead of time to get us there. All right, so I'm bringing it out here. So it's kind of like almost like what preaching is, right? Here's what's happening in the world. Now here's what the Bible is going to speak into it. You're like, how does the Bible speak into it? Now I'm going to show you all these different ways that maybe it's going to speak into it. I want you guys to determine if it really is. Okay, so the author is saying 3 times he loved as himself. All right, I got one more passage for you. Verse 41 and 42. Well, I don't have one more passage, but in that little tiny thing there. 41 and 42. After the boy had gone, David got up from the south side of the stone. I have no idea what that means, and bowed down before Jonathan 3 times with his face to the ground. Then they kissed each other and wept together, but David wept the most. All right, so now there's this whole way of reading these texts, right? In hermeneutics, like you have feminist reading, you have postmodern readings, and there's actually homosexual readings that happen in texts like this. This would be one of those that people would see. I mean, it says that they kissed each other and wept over each other. Okay. I don't think it has anything to do with homosexuality in there at all, but the language is intense, intentionally. They loved each other intensely, so much so that there's a passion between them. So what I'm going to ask question here is, how do people get friends like this? Anybody ever had a friend like this? We keep asking this question, where you kissed them a lot. Hey, I don't want, you can't use your wife anymore. That doesn't count. Okay. A friend, like just a friend. Okay. Someone that you've kissed a lot and were passionately intense with and wept over. Yeah. Okay. Not quite so much. Okay? It's a little bit weird, at least for our time, for our world, but in their world, probably not so much. All right. So Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, for we have sworn friendship with each other in the name of Yahweh, saying, the Lord is witness between you and me and my descendants and your descendants forever." And they went back to town. So they swore friendship. There it is, the word friendship. Okay. Now, what? Wait, let's see here. And just one more little thing there. Verse 31, just a little bit earlier, just wanted to remind you, as long as the son of Jesse lives on this earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established. Now send and bring him to me, for he must die. So Saul is letting Jonathan know here, you will never be the king. And then a few verses later, they swore friendship to each other. David has just taken his throne. Not technically yet, but the promise is that he will take his throne. I can't think, if somebody took your job, right, you're not going to be their best buddy anymore. But the kingship is something very different. Okay, so I want to know how in the world this friendship started. What is it that the author is doing? He's given us hints already. Love is himself, covenanted, all those kinds of words, that there's some sort of a relationship, which makes me think that the author's trying to get to more than simply tell us stories that are simply for Israel, okay, which I think they are. We'll get to that in just a second. Okay, so now jump backwards, because in order to figure out how they got there, right, you remember in movies, you got to go 3 days earlier or 1 month earlier, right? We're going back now. We're backtracking all the way to chapter 14. Now we get these really familiar passages. And then when we get to the next text, it's going to be even more familiar. Probably the most familiar passage in all of Scripture, at least for boys under the age of 10. Okay, that's where we're headed. But this one's a little bit less. You might not remember this one quite as well. All right, so 14. A detachment of Philistines had gone out to the pass at Michmash. One day, actually, that's a little bit into 13, but I wanted to give you the little extra there. One day, Jonathan, son of Saul, said to the young man bearing his armor, "Come, let's go over to the Philistine outpost on the other side." But he didn't tell his father. Okay, so you understand what's happening? He and his armor bearer are going for a hike. I don't think we've talked about this here before, have we? We done this one?
This is the badass raid section. I don't know. We've talked.
Wait, we have talked about it?
No.
No. Okay, you'd remember this one. Okay, good. I often lose track. I teach so many different times during a week that I can't remember which ones I've talked about too.
This is like the covert ops section of the Bible.
It is. It's covert ops. It's beautiful. All right, come over to the Philistines' outpost on the other side. But he didn't tell his father. Okay, children, you should probably tell your father. Jonathan is a grown man at this point. He doesn't have to tell his dad. All right. So Saul's staying on the outskirts of Gibeah under a pomegranate tree in Migron. Okay, I don't know why all the details, but here's Saul over here in Migron, very far away. With him are about 600 men, among whom was Ahijah, who was wearing an ephod, which makes him a priest, remember. He's the son of Ichabod's brother Ahitub, son of Phinehas, son of Eli, the Lord's priest in Shiloh. No one was aware that Jonathan had left because he didn't tell his dad. So here's Jonathan over with his armor bearer. Here's Saul with the whole priesthood clan, 600 warriors and the priesthood. So the king and the priest are over here. Jonathan is separate from them. Okay, so first thing you're like, why is Jonathan not with the group? Well, what we know about Saul at this point is that Saul is sitting under a pomegranate tree. Okay, which doesn't speak super highly of Saul. Saul has 600 warriors, and he has the Ark of the Covenant, probably, right? The priesthood there. What should he be doing at this point as king? Should probably be fighting, right? That's the call. So here's Jonathan. On each side of the pass that Jonathan intended to cross to reach the Philistine outpost was a cliff. One of those cliffs was called Bozez and the other Seneh. One cliff stood to the north toward Michmash, the other to the south towards Geba. So we got some geography. You can see him walking. I picture the never-ending story with the two huge sphinxes on the side, right? These are two huge, remember that? And the eyes open. Nobody. All right. Okay. Well, just picture two giant mountains on the sides, these cliffs on either side. And they have names. Jonathan said to his young armor bearer, "Come." That's interesting that they emphasize young, but that's generally going to be the case because the job of the armor bearer is to, well, bear his armor, to carry it for him because he's a prince. Okay, so he's carrying it. He's going to be taking care of it. He's also going to be protecting him, protect his back, etc. So he said, "Come, let's go over to the outpost of those uncircumcised fellows. Perhaps the Lord will act in our behalf." Now, I got a sermon entitled exactly that one day you guys will all get to hear. Actually, I think Josh has heard it. Actually, I think Warsaw heard it too. But one day, the people in my world here will get to hear it out. Perhaps the Lord will act on our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few. Do all that you have in mind, his armor bearer said. Go ahead. I'm with you, heart and soul. Okay, I love that line. Go ahead. Do everything, whatever you got in mind, go for it. I'm with you, heart and soul. Okay, that would connect great with that, with Bob Goff's book, Rebecca, with like, I'm with you, heart and soul. If you guys haven't read, what's it called? Love Does. It's one of the first little stories in there. You guys should read it. So go ahead. I'm with you, heart and soul. Jonathan said, "Come then. We'll cross over towards the men and let them see us. If they say to us, 'Wait there until we come to you,' we'll stay where we are and not go up to them. But if they say, 'Come up to us,' we'll climb up, because that'll be our sign that the Lord has given them into our hands." So both of them showed themselves to the Philistine outpost. "Look," said the Philistines, "the Hebrews are crawling out of the holes they're hiding in." The men of the outpost shouted to Jonathan, his armor bearer, "Come up to us and we'll teach you a lesson." All right, so here's the deal that they make. The armor bearer and the prince make this deal. If they say, "Come up," we're going to go up and we're going to kill us some bad guys. If they stay down there and we're going to come to you, we're hightailing it out of here because that means God hasn't given them over to us. We have. Okay, so they crawl up to them and the mocking begins from the top. I picture them, either the peas from what's the VeggieTales or Monty Python, the French people up on the towers mocking them, right? We mock you, yeah. Okay, so both of them are based on the same thing. So
We fart in your general
we
direction.
fart in your. I wasn't going to say it out loud, but yes, we fart in your general direction. Exactly.
Your mother was a
And
Like elderberries, yeah.
like what? Elderberries, yes. Yep. All right, so they're mocking them. So Jonathan said to his armor bearer, "Climb up after me. The Lord has given them into the hands of Israel." Jonathan climbed up, using his hands and feet, with his armor bearer right behind him. The Philistines fell before Jonathan. Okay, picture this scene, right? I don't know what it looks like when he and his armor bearer, it says that they climbed up hand over foot, right? The words there, yeah, using his hands and feet. So this is not like they're not walking up a mountain. They're like climbing up a mountain. Like, I don't know, he's got a sword in his mouth, probably in his scabbard, right? The shield's on his back, Captain America style, and they're climbing up, these two guys all alone, while Saul, the king, and his fighting men are back under the pomegranate tree, sitting there eating peeled grapes and pomegranates. I don't know what they're doing, but they're back there. Jonathan's like, I'm not waiting for Dad to get here. Like, I'm not even gonna tell him I'm going. I'm going for this. And the Philistines fell before Jonathan, and his armor bearer followed and killed behind him. In that first attack, Jonathan and his armor bearer killed some 20 men in an area about half an acre.
I tell you what they're not doing. They're not killing Philistines.
They're not, yes, the warriors sitting under the pomegranate tree.
Right.
Yeah, they're not killing. Yeah, that's exactly right. And they're supposed to be. Okay. Now we don't talk about whether they really should be killing, whether God has really called them to kill. But in the ancient Near East, this is the context for them to know that Yahweh is the best God. They need to be killing the bad guys. And these Philistines are the bad guys. And God has handed them over. Just imagine 2 people against 20. I can't even picture that. That doesn't even compute to me. Like, how would you do that? 2 people against 20. It could be 20 kindergartners, and I probably couldn't take them. Just sheer force of numbers, they would probably beat me down. Okay, especially if they've got swords. But this is working. Okay, so imagine the trust that this guy Jonathan has in his armor bearer, and vice versa. The armor bearer saying, "I'm with you, heart and soul. Whatever it is that you're ready to do, I'm going to go as well." And the like-mindedness that they have, knowing this is the task that's in front of them. We will take out these enemies. All right, so now jump forward to 1 Samuel chapter 17. Okay, for our last major passage here, before we get back to our application. All right, 1 Samuel 17, you've probably seen this one before. At the top of mine, it says something about this kid, David. All right, 1 Samuel 17, and let's figure out what we want to read. So let's start at 2. Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped on the valley of Elah and drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. The Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites another, with the valley between them. So we've got these 2 places, right, and a valley in between. They're both on a hill, so nobody wants to go down into the valley exactly, because then they're going to get destroyed. So they stay on the hills, and what they're going to do is they're going to bring some champion in between. A champion named Goliath, who is from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. He was over 9 feet tall. Okay, there's a lot of argument as to how tall he was. Doesn't really matter. He's a big boy. Okay, he's huge. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. Okay, scale armor is, like Captain America has with a chainmail, that kind of thing. But it's supposed to look like a snake. Very important to this whole story is that Goliath is supposed to be a snake character, a snake reference. And you remember at the end, right, what they do to him. They cut off his head, okay, which is what you're supposed to do to a snake, especially snakes that talk, for instance. That's just freaky weird. So this is just another movement in the Genesis story, that the son of the serpent is going to come and try and defy the armies of the living God. In fact, those words are almost directly what he's going to say. So scale armor, bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. On his legs, he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels. His shield bearer went ahead of him. Okay, so he's got an armor bearer too. Okay, that guy's going ahead of him, but he's humongous. And Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are not you the servants of Saul? Choose for me a man and have him come down to me. If he's able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." Then the Philistines said, "This day I defy the ranks of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. All right, you know the story. I'm gonna do a little quick summary here. Okay, David's gonna come out. Little David, shepherd boy, 12 years old? I'm sure he's not. He's probably a man. He's just a younger man. Okay, he's out there, and this happens for 40 days. Okay, or the complete amount of time of testing. 40 is pretty significant in the Old Testament, right? That's the 40 days in the wilderness, the 40 years in the wilderness, 40 and rain coming down. Like it's a pretty consistent story here. And And David is going to be sent to the camp to take care of his brothers, bring in some cheese. He's the errand boy. And he comes and he hears, as he was talking, this is verse 23, as he was talking to his brothers, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance. And he heard it. When the Israelites saw the man, they all ran from him in great fear. Really interesting to me because this has been happening day after day after day, and they're still running from him in fear. Now, the Israelites have been saying, do you see how this man keeps coming out? He comes out to defy Israel. The king will have great wealth to the man who kills him. He'll also give his daughter in marriage, etc., etc. So David asked the men standing near him, what will be done for him? Who is this uncircumcised fellow that he should defy the armies of the living God? Okay, so 26, he's defying the arms of the living God. Look at verse 36. Your servant, he's talking to Goliath at this point, your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine, oh, he's not talking to him yet. I'm sorry, I lied. He's talking to Saul. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them because he has defied the armies of the living God. Okay, now twice you've heard that one. So let's remember, the author's doing something. Defies living God. Something that happens all throughout the Old Testament. He's a Pharaoh character. Pharaoh is also a serpent character, right? He even has the serpent headdress on him. Defying the armies or the hosts, the counted men, defying them, the ones who serve the living God. So now, here's my question. 1 Samuel 14, we've got Jonathan and his armor bearer climbing up this mountain, this cliff, in order to destroy the bad guys. 40 days now of Goliath yelling out, defying the armies of the living God. Do you ask the same question I'm asking? Where the heck is Jonathan? Thought about that? Where's Jonathan? Because Saul's he's not under the pomegranate tree anymore, right? He's there, he's on the battlefield. This is 3 chapters later. Things have moved forward. Time has passed. Where's Jonathan? So now we're doing Midrash. You remember Midrash? Midrash comes from Darash. Darash is this imaginative retelling. It's a gap-filling way of telling stories. So the rabbis are going to look at this and maybe they're going to ask the same question. Where the heck is Jonathan? So they're going to start filling in gaps. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to play. Where's Jonathan? I don't know. Maybe he is
At the well.
out on a date. What'd you say, Travis?
At the well, picking up the chicks.
At the well, picking up the chicks. Yep. Maybe so. Maybe he's just not around. Maybe he's far away. Philistines run all the way up the Mediterranean Sea. Oh, that's what Sarah said? Yeah. It's a good one. Okay. Or maybe there's lots of different battlefronts. Okay. This is one of the battlefronts, but maybe somewhere else. Maybe he is still way wherever Milgrom is and he's working his way back. Okay. Maybe he's been taking names and scalps all the way on his way back as he's been killing different Philistines and he's finally getting there. I just can't imagine that if Jonathan is standing there for 40 days, Jonathan be like, I'll take care of him right now. Like, just give me a sword. I'm ready. Okay, Jonathan doesn't seem to be afraid of 20 people. What?
Why is Jonathan got to do all the work?
Yeah, maybe that's what he's thinking. Why am I doing all the work? But for 40 days, like he probably would have. He wasn't afraid of 20 people. He's probably not afraid of these guys. Okay, so I picture he's on his way back. Okay, for some reason he's not there. Now, chapter 18, remember, tells us about David and Jonathan's relationship. That's where we already were. And chapter 20 tells us about this. He loved him as he loved himself 3 different times. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm just picturing this scene as David is walking out onto the field. And I can imagine that Jonathan has just gotten there. Right? He's pulled up on his really nice chariot. kind of done a little 360, he's kind of pulled up. He's like, I'm home. And then he looks out and he hears Goliath yelling, and he sees this guy walking down the field to meet him. And he's walking out there without any weapons, no armor, no sword, no javelin, no spear, nothing, no helmet. He's just got a sling. And maybe he can't quite hear what's happening, and he's getting closer and closer. And then he starts to see, this guy say, "How dare you defy the armies of the living God," right? He hears Goliath saying things like, "I'm going to feed you to the birds, and, I'm going to break you like a twig." And, David's like, "Yeah, well, we'll see about that." Starts swinging that rock, sees it fly, watches David pull out his sword and cut off the snake's head, right? All these things. I could see Jonathan is just watching in amazement. Maybe he's asking, who's this kid? What in the world what just happened here? I've just seen all of this, but tell me what they said. Well, it's been 40 days. He's been 40 days. How come no one's gone out and beaten this crap out of this guy? Like, do you see the guy? He's like huge. He's like, but there's Dave. I mean, he's the little guy and he's walking up there. So the next chapter, the author is very intent to tell us by the next chapter, their hearts were knit together. Right? They were of one spirit. So why are their hearts knit together? What does it mean to be a friend? I think this close loyalty to this close rallying unity around one thing. They both had the same goal. They both had the same allegiances. They both had the same purposes. So I'm going to ask you again about your friends. Is that what your friendships are built around? Or is it something that very seldom comes up? Like, do you have the same allegiances? Let me go one more exegetical point here, okay? Because we've done all this stuff. Okay? We've talked about the author. He's given us a few clues that can get us here, but I don't think that that's the main point, right? David and Jonathan's friendship. There's something deeper going on here. Okay, so we're gonna follow the story of Israel. So what we need is other interpreters. Other interpreters. So we're gonna grab hold of the A here and the O here, and we're gonna put them together. And we're gonna say the author is trying to get across maybe this friendship idea, for sure. There's something about that allegiance and that loyalty. And I think it's probably a call to the people of Israel to have fidelity to the king. I think that's probably one of the main reasons that Samuel is written there, because remember, all along, judges, they were doing what was right in their own eyes. Samuel, they've chosen a king who's like all the other kings. And now we're switching kings. This is like the transition from one king to another, to the Davidic king, to the new king. So the author is saying, this king is the kind of king that we need, not one underneath a pomegranate tree, not one who listens for 40 days and doesn't go out there and take care of them. We need a warrior king, one who fights and protects the people of Israel. We need David. Remember, that's why this whole book is written, to give you credence for the Davidic empire. It's not an empire, kingdom. Right? So that's its purpose, is to point you to the king. In that kingship is also this friendship idea. So I think both things are very important, kings and friendship here. So if we're going to trace this idea of king and friendship into other interpreters, as other people who are using this idea, then we can get here a lot easier. There are these other passages in the Bible that talk about kings and friendship. Okay, we're just going to call these people Second Temple interpreters. Or you might call them the New Testament. right? They're going to jump off of some of these yeah, right? They're going to jump off some of these ideas and play with this king friendship theme that's going to keep on going in here. So there's this passage that John the Apostle talks about. He says, speaking of there not being anything greater than friends, he says, the greatest example of a friend is someone who does what?
Lays down his life.
Good job, right? Lays down his life for your
Brother.
friend, right? That's what a friend does. He lays down his life. And he continues by saying, you are my friends if you do what I command. Kingship and friendship. You're my friends if you do what I command. So no friendship in the world. So I think this text, even though I think it's pointing to something about Israel in the Old Testament, right? Around 1,000 years before Jesus comes, I think these other interpreters are going to grab hold of that theme and bring it into the New Testament. And they're going to say, as all things when we're looking in there, they're going to say, in what way is the Old Testament pointing to the New Testament? King, prophet, priest. So whenever you see one of these roles in the Old Testament, you can go immediately into the New Testament and interpret it that way. So we have definitely a king. So we're supposed to look to Jesus as being the great king, right? The true king. Hebrews is going to say that he's a better king than Moses, Aaron, Melchizedek, angels, etc. He's a better priest. He's a better prophet in each one of these places. So each one of these things is going to, anyway, this is where we move in these other interpreters. So I don't want us ever to just do the Old Testament, right? You remember that from the hermeneutics class? We called it Christotelic interpretation, that the goal of all of these passages is to get us to the true king. So there's no friendship in the world.
Suspicion, Professor Jace Broadhurst, or Professor Broadhurst, that in the middle, I see a chiasm, like in the middle, the focal point being like 15, chapter 15, verses 16 through like maybe 23, or excuse me, 24, where you have this, has the Lord as much delight in burnt offerings as sacrifices, as in obeying the voice of the Lord. And you said this allegiance that Jonathan and David were having, like the obedience would be like the focal point, like obedience to Yahweh. This is the kind of kingship we want, that the Lord wants. He doesn't want burnt sacrifice. He wants an allegiance to him from of the heart, not of. Anyways, I don't know if is there a chiasm in this?
I hadn't looked to see if that really plays out, but for sure we see something in 14 and 18, and you're talking about in 15 and 16 bringing that together. I would definitely make the connection, because that was the connection I was trying to make without actually bringing a verse in, that it's obedience to the Lord that brought them together. They were both pledging allegiance to the same king. They both had the same warrior goal. We will fight for the people of God. We will be God's warriors in the world. So yeah, they obeyed their commands, which is beautiful, right? Their commander. Because when you get to John, he's going to say the same thing. If you're my friends, you'll obey my commands, right? So if you're friends with God, and a bunch of you are friends with God, then friendship here is much easier, is much more real. It has depth. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean you can't have friends that aren't that, but I'm guessing you won't have it to the same degree. Right? Just as the friends that you have now probably have something in common. There's something about them that connects for you. You both like to play pinochle. You both love to watch Marvel movies. I don't know what your thing is, but you can imagine if it's something like that, the friendship is kind of whatever. But it's when it gets higher and higher and higher, when you have an allegiance to the king and you're both planning, like, okay, how do we pledge together to honor, to obey the king? What will we do? That kind of friendship is going to last forever. So let me ask you this. So would your best friends, right, the 3 or 4 of you who named best friends, or just any of your friends, are they people you think honestly would lay their life down for you? And maybe that's not a fair question to ask, but would you lay your life down for them? Are you that kind of a friend to them? And then think about it, take one more step further than that. Jesus will go even further than what John will say in this passage later on. He'll say that we're supposed to lay down our lives even for our enemies. Right? This is Jesus on the cross. Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. These are enemies that he lays down his life for. So do you have that kind of friendship with the world? The good kind of friendship with the world. Paul's going to talk about a bad friendship with the world, but there's also a good one. See you, Bill.
It's difficult to think about a person laying down their life for another person with the lives that we live. If we were over in third world countries, and if we lived back at that time where death was all around you, it's just not like that for us. We are so rich or blessed or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It's really hard to grasp hold of laying down your life for someone.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And so that's a beautiful point. So then the question is, how do we make that jump? Because the chances are good you're never going to be asked to lay your life down for someone. It's never even going to come up. But isn't it, sometimes to me, it seems like it would be much easier for me to lay down my life for somebody, make a one-time huge sacrifice, than it would be to lay my life down over and over and over again for somebody. That is to put my advantages away and give them to somebody else over and over again. I'm looking around, a lot of you are married or have been. Like, how hard is that to lay down your life for your spouse every day when they're selfish, kind of a jerk sometimes, right? We know each other.
Well, how about this? I do it for others with ease, but my wife wants me to wake up early with her and cook her breakfast and do a devotional with her, and I struggle to do that. Yeah. Why? And I did this morning, and like everything was so great, and I'm thinking, what's wrong with, like, why is it so hard? The ones we love the most, it seems like, are the hardest ones to do this with, and they get the wrath of like whatever it is that's ailing us. Yeah. It seems that, anyways. This is
you're right. We're such good friends to everybody else. Yeah. But the people we are most friends with, the people we love the most, we treat like they're not that much friends sometimes. Yeah.
Or like Israel did this with Yahweh too. It's like they were like going around and just being idolatrous with other gods, and Yahweh's just like, guys, what is wrong with you? You're treating me like, you guys are treating me like trash.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the call throughout the Bible. Yeah, good.
How about we're all white and we all live in the first world, and we probably could give up a whole lot more than we are giving up to help people who are less fortunate than ourselves. But we don't. Let's push real. Let's get the hard truths.
That's true, yeah. We're
I
individualistic.
have a house that's way too big for what I need. I could fit, there's families that fit 5 families in a space this big.
Yep.
Or 10.
Yeah, but how do you do that? This is the everyday wisdom, right? How do you sacrifice? How do you die a million little deaths every day and still provide for your family and love? Like, are you going to sell your house and buy 5 little houses for other people? And I don't think there's an answer to that. There's not like an obvious. So for you, Travis, it might be you sell the house, or it might be you not. Somebody else might have a completely different call in their life as to what that looks like. But the question is, have we stopped and figured out? Have we thought about, how do I be a friend with what I have?
Or start with just realizing how good we have it sometimes.
Travis, is okay, how good we have it, but that's like almost like a curse, because I talked to somebody from Africa who's in this communal type living situation, and I said, how do you like America? He says, I can't stand it. And they didn't say it in those words, but he said, it's so individualistic. and it creates this environment where it's like dog eat dog, it's difficult to pick up our cross and die to self and love our neighbor, let alone, our love our enemy, let alone our enemy, right? Loving our neighbor is difficult, let alone our enemy. And I think, we have to look at the system, the structure of the society we live in. It's, and I'm not saying that, capitalism and democracy is obviously the best we've got so far, but and I'm not a communist or a socialist, but what is it that we're being called to do? As Christians, in reality, what type of living? Is it this? Is it capitalist America? I don't know. I see Christianity dying here, and I see it thriving in places like Africa, where it's like this communal setting. People are, about the community. It's not about self.
Good.
Yeah.
And we could answer, well, we could never answer that question, I don't think, but we should be asking the question over and over again in community like this. But let me reduce the question to, like, what does it mean to find a friend? Not everybody raised their hands, right? I feel like I spend my life like wondering, are these people really friends or are they not friends? What does it mean to really be a friend? Like I've always bemoaned the fact that I've never really had a best friend, because I don't know what a BFF is. Sorry, Travis. Sorry, Josh. Sorry. Are there any other guys on here? No, it's just you two. Oh, Matt. Love you guys. So ladies, you're definitely not gonna take that spot. But what does it mean to be a friend?
Seriously.
Right? Except for you, Sarah. Sorry.
You. Jeez. See if I said you any more brownies.
That's how true friendship is known. Brownies and peanut butter M&Ms. Just saying. So a couple of you guys are rocking this.
Well, then,
yeah. Rebecca's done a great job with the peanut butter M&Ms. Stephanie and Sarah have helped me with those brownies. So well done there. The rest of you are not really.
In the brownie.
What was that?
What about brownies with peanut butter M&Ms in them?
I have never had that. Sounds very interesting.
Something to think about.
Okay. All right. So here's some application points. Okay. Friendship is a choice. Jonathan and David, right? They made a choice to be friends. You want to be friends. If you want to have friends, be a friend. There's a little poem. I went out to find a friend, but could not find one there. I went out to be a friend, and friends were everywhere. Isn't that cute? I need a little. Good. I needed them all. Thank you. So I don't think God wants us to sit back and thank you. Yes, thank you for that, Rebecca. It's true. But I do like brownies with mixed peanut butter swirled in them. I really do. That's mixed. All right, back. Focus. Friendship. God doesn't want us to sit back and wait for him to do something all the time, right? Sometimes we're supposed to go out and make friends. And some of you were asking, what does it mean? What kind of friends are we supposed to be making? Travis was saying, hey, there's people overseas that we could be making, or friends around us that are not going to be our normal people that we're going to go to, but we can create friends. We can make them by moving into their world. But because you must choose a friend, the second thing I want to say is choose wisely. Choose people that are passionate about the same things that you're passionate about. Think David and Jonathan. Okay, who's passionate about these things? Some of you got friends, but if you stop and think, maybe they're not the best kind of friends. Maybe not this esteemed group. I'm sure you guys have all great friends, but there might be some people in your life that don't have the same passions that you have, or people around you that aren't encouraging you, aren't building you up. George Washington said, "Associate yourself with men of good quality if you esteem your own reputation, for it's better to be alone than in bad company." Ben Franklin, be slow in choosing a friend, slower in changing. Okay, so choose well and hold on to them. Anyone who chooses to be a friend of the world, becomes an enemy of God, is also in the New Testament. So how do you find a friend with like passions? One way is to let your passions be known. Okay, that is, you should be representing your passions in everything you're doing. All the things that you do should be for a purpose, for the goal of fidelity to the King. So because your friends are like-minded, because they're passionate, third thing I'm going to say is that friends will go into any danger with you, right? They're the people who come in when everyone else has gone out. They stand by you when things get tough. If you really want to know who your friends are, this is just a little quote from a place I got. If you want to know who your friends are, go ahead and make a mistake. Then you'll find out, right? In my case, it would be, if you want to know who your friends are, whine a lot for a long time and see who sticks around. All right?
What about that saying, show me your friends and you show me you?
Yeah, people around. That's right. It's good.
It's
Yeah.
birds of a feather.
Flock together. Yep. So because friendship is a choice and it's based on like passions and loyalty, it shouldn't end. It should be something that continues on. And yeah, friends are work. Okay, just like spouses are work, friends are work. And if you're truly a friend, you're going to be opening yourselves up to people. You're going to be vulnerable with them. But being a friend means that when you're hurt, the friendship continues. You just continue. You just choose to make it work. And again, spouses, same thing. You just choose to make it work and be friends with that person. So Jonathan and David made an eternal covenant, right? Yeah, so I've got 15 minutes and I won't need it. So the end part of this is, what kind of friends are you going to make? Will you be a friend to someone else? Are you going to choose people with the right passions? Are you going to recognize Christ's act of friendship? Right? Follow the trajectory here. While you were yet enemies of his, he died for you. And that means you need to go out and make friends, and they might not be people that you would expect.
So what does that mean in light of your, like, be careful who you become friends with then?
Yeah,
'Cause, like-
well, it's right. So, and I do think that's a great point, because we're talking about two different things. We're talking about becoming a friend and really like finding people that are that you can invest in. I think there's probably going to be different kinds of friends. This is a good. I don't think I have an answer to that. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, because opposites attract. One, opposites attract, and then sometimes friends can be rude and mean and maybe purposely or subconsciously cut you off. This just happened to me over COVID, like some ridiculous situation where I said the magic word. I asked the lady if she had COVID, and she's one of my close friends, and she just totally flipped her lid on me. I flipped her wig and just totally just betrayed our friendship and kicked me out of her house. And I thought she looked as possessed and psychotic. And I thought, I didn't even know what just happened. And I reached out to her. Anyways, what I'm saying is I befriended this person. She's a true friend. Now I feel convicted, like I need to reach out to her and continue our friendship. I did send a text message and I called. And anyways, what happens when friends that you love and have built a relationship with, cut you off, or it's just you put yourself out there to be hurt is basically what I'm saying. It's friendship is difficult and it hurts.
Yeah, I think that's a wisdom thing again. Like there's going to be a time when you do let people go, right? You can only reach out to people so long, and
Sure.
you need to be a friend to other people. So I think this is just going to be a balance where you have conversations with other friends when you say, "Hey, here's a theoretical situation. Is it time for me to let them go yet?" I won't know the answer to that.
You let them go with a text message, or do you Thanks for laughing, dude.
Sounds like a Seinfeld episode.
A Facebook status update.
Sound like Seinfeld.
You unfriend them on
No.
Facebook. That's what I went to do, but I decided not to unfriend her.
I think having a
Okay.
friend, I think having someone that is a friend of mine depends on how I am a friend of theirs. We look at Christ, who stayed friends even though they ran away from him, they hid, they lied, did all these things, and he remained a friend and waited for them to come back. And I think about Christ in that all the people that were following him, but when he mentions cannibalism, they all run away. Right?
Yeah. Yep. Eat my body. Yeah, no, thank you. Yep. Yeah, I was thinking of your thing, Travis. Like, I think we have different kinds of friends. And I think all I would say is make sure that the people that are closest, that your good friends, your inner circle, is someone who needs a hug and gives it. Okay. Your inner circle are people who have the same allegiance as you do, that have the same passions, that can hold you up to the standard of Christ. I do also think we probably need to reach out and try to make friends with people who are different than us, maybe even non-Christians, and love them well, to show them, to represent the love of Christ to them. So we need both of those. But I mean, that's one of the reasons for the church, right? It's like a headquarters. You go back after you've gotten beaten up by other people and by just the world, and hopefully they give you hugs, and they care for you, and they bind your wounds. So that would be my advice. Again, all back to that balance and wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think we would all agree, like, having boundaries is a healthy thing. But then when it comes to like biblical perspective on that, it's always somewhat interesting. We're like, oh, love everybody. And how do boundaries play in from a biblical point of view? And like, Jesus goes off in the boat by himself and takes naps. Like, he's got some boundaries. And he's like, hey, calm down. But yeah, it's definitely like, where's that? It's a fine line. It's always some sort of thing, I think. Yeah. How do you love everybody and have boundaries at the same time?
What about having friends? Go ahead.
No, you go.
What about having friends, and we depend on each other, we lean on each other. We, as we talked about, community, but ultimately, not needing their approval or their friendship to be okay, because oftentimes that happens. We make our friends our gods, or we idolize certain people in our lives. And so, like, going back to what Don Broadhurst just said, is like, we make Jesus our friend, and his yoke is easy and his burden is light. And that way we're okay with being alone. And I think that's the biggest, if you look down and look at psychologically, the biggest fear humans have, one of them is the fear of death, and the other one is fear of abandonment, fear of being alone. And a lot of times loneliness is it's a real thing. Isolation is huge. I mean, so yeah, I guess my point is not making our friends, not needing them to be okay, but being okay and having them. Not needing them to be okay, but being okay, and in being okay, we are able to receive. Kind of like what you said, your quote, went out to find a friend and none were there, went out to be a friend and they were everywhere. Yeah, that's genius,
Yeah,
When we're
loneliness is
okay, we go out to
epidemic.
be a friend.
Sorry, say that again.
What's that? No, I said when we're okay with God, we go out to be. We're going out to be a friend. It's like there's no neediness. Like, there's people. You ever see a person that's like real, like, oh, that person really, I think that person's really lonely. They're really needy, and so that's okay too, though. I mean, that's what we're called to do, is be. I don't know. Just be there for people who are needy.
Yeah, loneliness is an epidemic, is what I was going to say. It's a major problem. I'm actually preaching out of this Sunday called Mystic Sweet Communion, like what it means to come together as a church, how we're the antidote to that loneliness. But I think that wasn't your main point. Your main point was that while we need friends, our real need for a friend is Jesus. Right? He's the friend that stays closer than a brother. And those, as much as we want to bring other people in, he needs to be the one who completes all of our needs. We don't need to get that from everybody else. At the same time, he lets us provide that for us. It's a gift to us, our friendships.
Jace,
Mary? Yeah.
it's like, who's our first friend? Contrasting Saul and David and Jonathan. Saul, he had fear of man, and he wanted to do just right, and wanted to let's go to battle, and how am I going to look if Samuel leaves? Samuel leaves me, and I've got, you're not even here with me anymore. God's already left me. He's all has it backwards. And Jonathan and David both seem to care what the Lord thinks first, and then what other people think second. So I don't know. I just saw Jonathan and David together, kind of being like the two witnesses.
Good.
Who's our covenant with first?
Good word.
Yeah. First with Christ. Yeah.
Yeah, and different friends for different things. You got your heart friends that are Christians and are mature, and they're gonna call you on your BS when you need it. And then you have just some lesser friends that, they're fun to ride bikes with or whatever. But there's gradations of friendship.
That's wisdom. Good job.
So who's your best friend, Jace? I know it's me. It's cool. I get it. I know.
You all know who it is.
It's Jesus.
Exactly. All right.
Hey,
Anybody have last minute things they want to say? What did you say
What's the title of
about
your sermon? What's the title of your sermon this week?
Mystic Sweet Communion?
Nice.
It comes from that song, what's that song?
The Psalm.
The church is one foundation, maybe. Mystic Sweet Communion. For saints whose rest is one. Anyway, yep. The church is supposed to be mystic sweet, like John 17, where Jesus prays for the church that they would be one as he and the Father are one. That's some sort of mystical community, isn't it? It's amazing. We're supposed to be friends, connecting all in the same way that he and God are. That's how the connection, that kind of connection we're supposed to have. I think mystical is the best word for that. Yeah, just jumps into the chaos to save one instead of just friends.
Mystical is a good word for a lot of it.
It is. It's the word that I use because if I can't explain something. The mystical presence of Christ when it comes to eating of the bread and the cup. There's something happening. The presence of Christ is there. There's a mystical connection between us as Christians, I think. It's supposed to go deeper than being actual brothers and mothers and fathers. Right? Jesus says that kind of closeness. It's pretty powerful.
Maybe it's because we're all one.
Not we all. It's talking about the church. But yes, there is a sense in which we're all one too.
Talking about the elect.
We can use the word elect or church or the called ones. Way to bring this back to some really controversial issues.
Sorry, dude.
All right, I'm done. I got nothing more to say. 9:13. Let you go early. Tell your friends about Revelation next week if you guys want to get some new friends in here. We will start that. It'll be big picture. It'll still take probably 20 plus weeks to do it, but we'll barely get into the first two verses next week. because first two verses will tell us things about authorship and what we should be thinking about, the name of the book, things like that. So, but you don't want to miss the first week, or else the rest of the weeks won't make sense. Got to have some of the big picture stuff. So let's do that next week, and I'll see you guys later. Thanks. Bye.